Hi IED students, so we are going to take a look at removing the background from those snips that you took yesterday of the zip flyer part. So first of all, you want to open Adobe Photoshop. To get to it, you're going to go to your magnifying glass and you are going to type in photo, P-H-O-T-O. It's going to pop up right here, Adobe Photoshop CS6. You're going to click on it and it will load and it's going to look like this. For those of you who have used Photoshop before, this is going to seem like a big review. For those of you who have never touched this before, I'm going to go over some basics, some where things are, and get you to the point where you can get those backgrounds removed from those photos and add them into your new document. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to File and we're going to Open. And we are going to find those snips that we took yesterday. So I actually made a separate folder because I have all of these crazy things in my H drive. So I'm going to start with the 0.5 standoff, and you can see it's 0.5 standoff JPG. And if you saved it as a PNG, it's no big deal. It'll still work. So we're going to hit open, and then it's going to open this JPEG file. So this is what the screenshot that we took, the snip that we took from Inventor yesterday. And what I am going to do now is I'm going to come over here to my tool menu, and right now what's selected is my rectangular marquee tool. That would allow me to select this whole thing. That's not what I want. I actually just want the background. So I am going to grab my magic wand tool, and something you'll notice about the magic wand tool is when you click on it, and yours actually is probably set as this, in order to get a tool that's underneath another one, you click and hold. It pops out this menu, and you're going to choose magic wand. Okay, up here with the magic wand, we can set something called a tolerance. The way the magic wand tool works is it picks a color and then it chooses all of the surrounding pixels or little dots on the computer screen that are a similar color within a range of 15. I can increase that if I need to. I like to use 15. I think the default is 35. I prefer to use 15 because especially if I'm working with parts that are a similar color. So right now I have a gray background and a black part. They are in the same color family, so it can get tricky because it'll overpick and then I lose portions of my part. So I'm going to have my tolerance set to 15, and I'm going to start by clicking on any area in the background. So once I click, you're going to see I get these marching ants is what we refer to them as, and what that's showing me is the parts I have selected so far. It selected most of the background but not all of it. I'm now going to push the shift key on the keyboard, and you notice I get a little plus sign next to my magic wand. I'm going to click on areas that are not inside the marching ant. So I just clicked on that corner and it added that corner to my selection. I'm going to continue to click, and now it brushed up right against that edge, quite pretty. And then I'm going to click one more time down here, and now I have the outside selected. Now before we can continue, I'm going to click my arrow tool over here. My marching ants are going to stay in place. If we go over here to the layers palette, this is very much like the browser in Inventor. Everything in Photoshop works on layers. Just like in Inventor, we have the different parents and children in our browser. Layers work the same way. You'll notice this lock right here next to it. Because this is identifying this as a background, we actually can't make any changes to it right now until I click on here, and I'm just going to hit OK. And it's going to unlock that layer. It changes it to layer 0 and it unlocks that layer. Now that I have unlocked that layer, I can now just push the delete key on my keyboard and it removes the entirety of my background. I'm now going to push Control D as in dog, and it's going to remove my marching ants. I'm now going to save this file as a PNG. And I know you're like, Ms. B, we were going to save it as a PNG before. We didn't need it as a PNG before because we were not trying to save that transparent background. Now this background is transparent, which means the computer doesn't see it as having a color behind it. So we're going to save this as a PNG, and we're going to hit save. And then we're going to choose OK. And I now have a transparent background image. So that's how we remove the background from our other images. Once you have all of those backgrounds removed, we're going to add them into our Photoshop file. Now, to create your actual Photoshop file, we're going to go to File, New. And right now it's trying to save it from the clipboard. So something I copied earlier, it wants to create it that size. This is not the size that we want, and you can see it's measuring in pixels. Yours might be defaulting to a letter size, 8.5 by 11 by inches. If it's not, you just need to choose inches from over here. And there's two different ways that you can identify the size of your document. If you and your partner want to use a landscape format, so just like the example that I did, you are going to make the width of your document 17 and the height 11. When you do that, it's going to create a landscape document. So this is an 11 by 17 in landscape. If you want it in portrait mode or portrait style, I'm going to change it so that my width is 11 and my height is 17. And that's going to create a document that is portrait. Now, looking at these, you might be like, well, there's a lot more space on this one than on this one. That's just because of the orientation and the way it looks on screen. How it looks on screen is always different than what it looks like when it's printed out. Now, something you just noticed that I did was I just made the rulers I had at the edge of my screen disappear. Those rulers are really useful for figuring out how big your actual items are. Because again, it's really hard to see on screen what it's going to look like when it's printed. That's the difference between on-screen media and printed media. So if you push Control R, it's going to make these rulers appear. And you'll notice that 0 is at the corner. It goes up to 17. And then you can kind of organize your stuff by placing it using these sizes and by segmenting out the different areas of your drawing. So I'm going to insert that image by going to File, and then I'm going to choose Place. I am then going to find that PNG that I created, and I'm going to choose Place. And you'll notice that it comes in here with that transparent background, which is awesome, but it's really, really big. Right now, this is a huge file. When I went to place this, it automatically gave me these little handles. If I hold the Shift key and drag from a corner, it keeps the object proportional and allows me to shrink it down to size. After I've done that, I can hit Enter, and it's going to place this item. So I now have this placed. I made it about, actually ironically, I made it about an inch in size. If I wanted to make it a ½ inch, because it's a ½ inch standoff, I could shrink it more. And I can do that by pushing Control T. That's going to bring up something called the Transform tool. And I can just then hold the Shift key and shrink it a little bit more, push the Enter key on my keyboard, and I now have this in place. Now again, I just made this like ½ inch in size, which is the size it is in real life, but it's tiny, it's small. So you might want to choose it to be a little bit bigger. You don't have to make it the actual size that it is in real life. Some people might like that, but it's going to depend on how you're using the rest of the space. Now to put in the text, you're going to choose the text tool, and the text tool works in two ways. You can either just click and it's going to give you a little dot and you can type just like that, and you'll notice it's still orange from when I made my example earlier. Or what you can do, and anytime you switch tools or want to start with a different text box, you need to click on the Move tool first and then switch to your text tool. If you want an actual box of text, you can click and drag and it's going to give you a box of text. So all right, you can then change the text up here. So in order to change the font, you have to highlight. And the font menu is really nice in Photoshop because it does give you examples of what the font is going to look like. You know there are certain fonts I cannot stand, so please try and avoid them. They're not aesthetically pleasing. There are also fonts that are completely unreadable, so don't choose those fonts. Make sure you're going through and making something that's super readable, and then choosing that font. I'm just going to go through here and I'm going to try and pick something that's not absolutely terrible looking. Let's pick Lucinda. Okay, Lucinda's not bad. You can change the size by choosing this drop down here. You can also change the look of it. So you can change it. Strong is essentially bold. Smooth just changes how it appears when it prints. You can change the justification. And you can also curve your text. So if you want, let's say this is a title, you can change it so that way it is curved. So let's just choose the arc, and then it begins to arc your stuff. Now remember, it still has to be readable, so be very careful if you're starting to use these effects like this. Okay, I'm just going to hit cancel and leave my text there. All right, the other thing is if you do copy and paste into here from the snip tool. So let's just see what I've got for... perfect. So you can see this picture came in super huge. Okay, this is that crossbar arm. It has the background still on it, but let's just use it as an example. In order to make it smaller, I need to push Control T on my keyboard after I've pasted, brings up the Transform tool, and it's going to allow me to shrink this down to a better size. Then I can choose my Move tool and I can move it around. Now, something some of you will notice as you're working in Photoshop is as you click on things, it's not selecting a different layer. The reason it doesn't do that is because when you have the move tool chosen, unless you check this little box called auto select, it won't identify what you're clicking on as the thing you want to work with. So you need to make sure auto select is picked. Otherwise, it's going to be really tedious to keep going over here to the layers palette and clicking things. When you go to save this file, you want to go File, Save As, and you want to make sure that you're saving this as a PSD, photoshop.psd.pdd. This is going to allow all those layers to stay there so you can come back and edit it. If you save it as a different file format, you won't be able to come back and edit it later. So we're just going to call this example 2, and I'm going to save. Now let's say I'm completely finished. I followed the rubric, I've checked everything off, I know what I have. The next thing I need to do is save this as a PDF. So we're going to go File, we're going to go Save As, and you're going to change in the drop-down menu to Photoshop PDF. The PDF is actually what you're going to upload into Classroom when you finish, which obviously isn't going to be for a little bit, but you need to know it's there. So we're just going to hit OK, 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 yes, give it what it wants. And then I have a PDF of this document that I can then upload to Google Classroom for my assignment. I hope this video was helpful. I hope you can find all the tools that you need to figure out how to make this poster. And if not, YouTube is a great resource. Go ahead and start trying to figure out. You can just type in how do I and then finish that sentence in YouTube. And you can probably find a tutorial on how to accomplish a task pretty easily. All right, it's time to get to work. Good luck, and let's get started.